You've had Wendy's Nuggs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose from flavors like honey barbecue, garlic parmesan, and buffalo. And of course, the hot variations of those flavors. Hot buffalo sounds really good today. Or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. I dare you. It's only on Wendy's signature Saucy Nuggs. 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you have never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. And welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. It is, of course, the Wendy's Sauciest Steak Wednesday. How are you doing, Ari?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm feeling saucy today. Feeling very saucy. I just posted a comment on 3 about the situation at USC. Obviously, the Branch brothers, Zachariah and Zion, went into the portal yesterday. Many other contributors have already gone into the portal. It ain't good. And I posted a column basically saying, you can go ahead and panic now.
Yeah, I read it last night, and I got to tell you, it felt good reading it after the dinner that we went to, not before it.
Yes,
I'm off the hook. It's no longer my burden, but man.
I did hold that over you for 2, because you did try to cash out that bet a year and a half in advance, and I just dangled it over your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just
you put me on the torture table.
That was more fun for me, honestly. Well, the dinner was great. The steak was amazing. Yeah. But the year and a half of torturing you with it was way more fun than the cash up front I would have gotten.
And the thing that was really annoying too, and bets tend to do this, Andy, is that like when they beat LSU in the opener, I was like, oh, wait a minute here. They could maybe go 10-2 and get in this thing. And no, that wasn't even close. But yeah, I cannot wait to get into this because it's just like, listen, there's being wrong about something and there's being the exact opposite of true, right? Like this is like, right. Just because he didn't make the playoff in the first 3 years doesn't mean that it was that like you could have been wrong about that, but he still could have been the right guy.
Yeah.
I was so wrong about it. Like this is an abject failure and disaster, like in every way.
Well, let's talk about it now. Let's do it now. Okay. Because we can do the saucy takes can simmer for a little bit. And we can talk USC now because it's interesting because when we were texting about this last night, you said I'm now apathetic toward USC, and here you are, shot out of a cannon. And I had a feeling you'd get there because you feel I think the same way I do because the column I wrote it on 3 is not just like I don't spend 1,000 words trashing Lincoln Riley.
Right.
It's more about how frustrating it is because Lincoln Riley was so good at his job and was so young. And you could see that, okay, if you tweak this and you tweak this and you tweak this, you can be an all-time great. Like when Lincoln Riley played Kirby Smart in the Rose Bowl, both of them seemed destined for what Kirby is now, but only Kirby got there. And it's incredibly frustrating because Lincoln Riley is so good at one part of the job, but does not seem equipped for the rest of it.
Well, you know what? There's a lot to unpack here. This could be the whole episode. But here's the thing that I saw a lot on Twitter yesterday, and I don't know if it's true, but I want to unpack it with you. A lot of people are saying, congratulations, Lincoln Riley, you ruined 2 blue blood programs. And I don't know if that's true, right? Like the first of all, USC wasn't humming on all cylinders when he took over, but you know, they did really well at Oklahoma during his time. Like that's some revisionist history of like,
well, and exactly. And it's not just because Bob Stoops left him an advantageous position. Like Lincoln Riley 1 was a big reason why Oklahoma was so good in Stoops' last couple years there. In fact, Stoops hiring Lincoln Riley turned the program around. And then look at what he did. Unlocks Baker Mayfield, gets the most out of him, gets the absolute most out of Kyler Murray. Remember Kyler Murray played at Texas A&M? Didn't look anything like that. Turns Jalen Hurts into a better quarterback. He was a much better quarterback at Oklahoma than the one we met at Alabama.
And I think you could make the case with Jalen Hurts that was the single best, most impressive transformation I've ever seen in a quarterback, period.
And set him up for NFL success, because the Jalen Hurts who left Alabama is not the Jalen Hurts that we see now playing for the Eagles.
Andy, there are times where I'll be watching Jalen Hurts play with the Eagles and he'll make a throw. And I'll think to myself, that man got benched in a national championship game because he couldn't throw well enough. Like, I mean, like the where he's come from. And I don't know if it was just he was, if it was all Lincoln Riley or, but there's
a piece of it there. Yeah.
I mean,
and then Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Right. So, like, listen, if your number one claim to fame in college football is you're a quarterback whisperer, then that's a pretty good claim to fame to have, right? Like, if you had to pick one aspect of the game to be excellent at, you'd probably be, I always have great quarterbacks, would probably be one of the things, or talent accumulation, one of the two. But those go hand in hand with that position. So I don't know, like the Oklahoma thing, I have a hard time with because they were so consistently good. Now their defenses stunk, but they were good.
And that is the weak spot that we said, okay, but he's young. He's in his 30s coaching Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like, okay, there's 30, you have 20 good years of being a head coach ahead of you. You'll figure this out.
But then there's the other aspects of this one, which is, are we overestimating what USC is? Like, where did I make my mistake? Was my mistake with thinking that Lincoln Riley was going to just turn USC into the Oklahoma West and run through the Pac-12? Because, like, Andy, when I made the bet, it was predicated on playing in the Pac-12. Like that. Right. So, like, them going to the Big Ten, and it was only year 3, so he had 2 years in the Pac-12. But in year 1, they were a half a football away from making the playoff. Mm-hmm. So we can't forget about that. Like, they had Caleb Williams, and they were good enough, at least offensively that year with Jordan Addison to make the playoff that year. They didn't do it, but I thought that they would be able to build, or that his vision probably when he took the job was that he would be able to build what he built at Oklahoma with maybe even less resistance because of the access to California talent that he was going to have, and that they would just run through that conference. That was my vision. That obviously has changed a lot because the playoff has changed, and of course their conference has changed. But is USC, are we overestimating its power at this point? Has the emergence of
you always have. I think USC and Texas and Florida are all very similar. With the right coach, they can be dominant. Without the right coach, they can be a mess.
The question that I have, if you put them on Texas and Florida level, then I don't overestimate them. That's a pretty great place to be. The question is even if they have the right coach, are they ever like peak Texas? Like, could USC be what Texas is now?
They were the right Pete Carroll. So yes,
I understand that, but that was 20 years ago now. So like,
you still do it. You still do it with the right guy. Okay. Well, here's the hypothetical. Dan Lanning goes to USC instead of Oregon in before the 2022 season.
That's the thing. Like, the thing that is tough for me is I thought you were going to get a young visor-wearing offensive guru to make USC cool again. If you go read the column that I wrote the day they hired him at The Athletic, it wasn't just that he was going to bring Caleb Williams with him. It was the statement that USC made from a financial aspect to get him, because I'm assuming he has a 10-year fully guaranteed God contract, right? Because
he does.
At the time that he signed that deal, everybody was getting that deal, and that was the only way they were probably going to poach him from Oklahoma at that point. That they made this financial commitment to go get somebody that wasn't on anybody's board, bring him to Southern California. They were going to recruit the hell out of the West Coast. They were going to be so much better than everybody but Oregon in the Pac-12, and they were going to run things. And it was going to look a lot like it did in year 1. Like every year, right? But now, like, I don't even know if like Lincoln Riley is the full person to assign the blame in this prediction, or if USC just is a more challenging job than I'm giving it credit for.
Okay, you didn't answer my hypothetical.
Oh yeah, no, I think
if Dan Lanning is USC's coach, is USC nationally elite?
But what I'm by saying yes, I'm wondering if I'm making the same mistake again.
No, you're not. Dan Lanning. Okay. Oregon is a harder job than USC, or as hard a job as USC.
I don't know that I agree with that right now. It used to be.
Okay, Oregon's NIL structure is probably better. But
I don't think it's.
But USC's not broke, Ari. Like,
it's not about being broke, but like Oregon does have a certain compensation situation, both with the.
I'm telling you right now, if Dan Lanning had gone to USC, USC would be the Big Ten champ. They'd be the number 1 seed in the playoff.
Yeah. Okay, so then it's not USC. Then we go back to Lincoln Riley. And you know what I saw yesterday that bothered me? And I don't know if it's just a disgruntled former player, but when Zach Branch went into the portal, Raleek Brown, the running back, the former running back, I think he was a 5-star prospect at the time, like posted like smart man or something on Twitter. And like, you don't really see that very often. Like sometimes you do. But is there a culture issue in the sense of like, not only are things not working out there, but do people hate playing for this man? Like, well, and then I
think we're going to find out. I am very curious to see what some of the cast-offs do. Like, how does Miller Moss perform playing for Jeff Brom, who is another quarterback whisperer, who also is a very good coach, who took Purdue to a Big Ten title game, who took Louisville to the ACC title game in his first year. Like, if Jeff Brom gets more out of Miller Moss than Lincoln Riley did, that tells you something. If whoever gets Deuce Robinson gets more out of Deuce Robinson than Lincoln Riley did, that tells you something. Zachariah Branch in the portal with a do not contact tag. That's that don't call me, I'll call you tag. If whoever gets him gets more out of him than Lincoln Riley did, that will tell you something.
You know what else I'm interested in? The reason for everybody leaving. Is it because they don't believe that USC can be good, or are they unhappy there?
Hold on. Jeffrey in the chat has a comment, and I want to unpack this. USC is not better with Dan Lanning, laugh out loud. Imagine Lincoln Riley with the resources that are at Oregon. Okay, imagine Lincoln Riley at Oregon. Their defense can't tackle, and they don't develop players on the line of scrimmage. Imagine Dan Lanning at USC. They develop players on the line of scrimmage and put them in the NFL. Jeffrey, you don't even watch football. Like,
I think what he's trying to.
That's absurd.
But I think what he's trying to get at is if Dan Lanning is a master talent accumulator and recruiter, or if Oregon has a better.
Dan Lanning is a master culture builder, like Kirby Smart is, like Nick Saban is, like Jim Harbaugh was.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I have nothing. Like, to me, it's like I think Dan Lanning is probably the number one, no doubt about it, hire that anybody could have right now if they were ever able to get him away from Oregon, which I'm not sure they would be. So, like, I'm not pushing back on it. The question I'm wondering is if Oregon's connection with Nike, not just from how much they're paying players, but like the routes to being affiliated with that brand and some of the things that they have to offer make it easier to get players, which in then turn makes it easier for you to build a better culture and look good.
Ari,
like,
they're in Eugene, Oregon.
I know.
USC is in Los Angeles. I don't care about that swoosh. Guess what? USC has swooshes on their jerseys too. Like, it's not that.
Well, I don't think it's just like having the swoosh on your jersey. I think it's like internship programs and brand affiliation and potential to be marketed in a different way. They have all sorts of PowerPoint presentations that they're telling these people when
they had that. They had that forever. They had that when Pete Carroll was at USC, and guess what? Pete Carroll's teams were way better.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm just trying to dissect. So if I'm just trying to dissect,
you want this to be about something that it's not. It's about, and some folks in the chat were right on it early on, and I wish I'd put it this way. Lincoln Riley is a good coach. He may not be a great CEO.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly. I mean,
right, but that's the thing. The CEO part has become so much bigger now.
Yeah, and I guess you have to ask yourself the question, too, of like, you know, we used to break down, like, what percentage of being a head coach was recruiting 5 years ago?
Right.
And I would say 80%. Like 80% of the job 3 years ago was getting good players on your team. Now, that's still part of the job, but where would the CEO aspect of it come into play, talent accumulation, and then also just being a good coach? Like the pie is broken up differently in what you have to be good at. So I don't know if he's just a terrible CEO. Maybe that's the truth. But like, if you're a terrible CEO, that makes you unqualified for the job in the same way that it would be 5 years ago to be a terrible recruiter.
Right. And that's the thing. I think the old rules where you had to sit out a year after you transferred, if you had a person who's not a great culture builder, who's not the best CEO, if they got some good players, then they still kept them for a while because they didn't have anywhere to go. Now, if you're not creating the culture that the players want to play in right now, they will even go find someone else who does.
Right. So this past year, Zach Branch had 47 receptions for 503 yards. You have seen Zach Branch with your eyeballs, and so have I.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The stats don't match up with the talent, in my opinion.
Correct.
Like he is,
which may or may
player.
not be Lincoln Riley's fault. We don't know that yet. So I'm not going to blame Lincoln Riley for that quite yet.
But then whose fault is it?
What could be Zach Branch's fault? You know Kadarius Toney, right?
I do know him, yeah.
Kadarius Toney, you just described Kadarius Toney. So sometimes people are insanely talented and it doesn't all come together.
I bought a few of his rookie cards because I thought he might unlock it in the league, and it didn't work out for me. But yeah. He scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. But that's the thing. Like, I'm not ready because I know it sounds like I'm just bashing Lincoln Riley here. I am not ready to bail on a 41-year-old person who's already done this much in his life. Like, I feel like it's possible to turn this around, but you got to want to. So I had this quote in my column, Ari. I was standing there in Indianapolis when he said this, and I wish there'd been a camera on.
You've been offended about this comment for 2 years because I've heard about this.
Well, not 2 years. It happened in July of 24.
Whenever that was. So I've heard about it 19 times, and when you say
yes, the look on all of our faces, because there were probably 15 of us in this gaggle asking questions of Lincoln Riley. And the look on our faces had to be just, what did he say? Excuse me? So here's what he said.
Last night, when so behind baseball here, and I'm going to let Andy say his comment here in a second.
Yeah.
When Andy and I write things for On 3, we send them to each other to just fact check and make sure everything's good. And Andy sent me a text like at 9 p.m. last night and said, "Hey, can you read this USC column?" And before I opened it, I knew what the lead was.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a few times because it's one of those things like, well, producer River can attest because when he said it, and Pete Nakos too, because Pete was at Big Ten Media Days with me. I think Pete was the first person I saw after I walked away from this thing. And I'm like, Pete, you're not going to believe this. So here's what he said. Someone had asked him, and these were a lot of the local reporters from LA, and they were asking some pretty tough pointed questions at this point. And someone had asked him about, where they are relative to the top teams in the Big Ten. And this is what Lincoln Riley said. He said, "We're at the top of the Big Ten conference. We're at the top of any conference. I don't ever look at ourselves as below anybody, and I never will. Look where Ohio State and Oregon were 2 years ago. Look at what they took over and look what we took over. It takes time. I'm not a magician. I can't wave a magic wand and have everything be perfect right away. Find one area where we haven't made progress. This thing's got momentum. It's coming. Nothing is going to stop it. That's fine. They started at a different point. We'll see where it ends up." Well, it ended up with them in the playoff and you at 6-6. And also the magic wand thing. Like, did Lincoln Riley not pay attention to his own results? Like, his USC's first team was good. And then it got worse.
I don't want to say easy because there's no such thing as being a Power 4 coach and having an easy time. This should be a lot easier than it's been, right? Like the part of the reason why
and I'm glad you said that because that's a really good point because that's something in living in the state of Florida I hear a lot, and I think now people have seen Florida State, Miami struggle at times enough to understand. Because I used to get out of shape when people would say, "Oh, Miami recruits itself, or Florida recruits itself, or Florida State recruits." No, it doesn't. Like, they're all actually very hard jobs. You have to be good to be good there. And same thing for USC. It's not easy. It doesn't recruit itself. You have to put in the work. You have to be willing to do it. And you have to do to succeed on the level that we're talking about. You have to be willing to be as maniacal as Kirby Smart, as Nick Saban was, as Dan Lanning currently is at Oregon, as Jim Harbaugh was at the end at Michigan. Like, you have to do all of those things or it doesn't work.
So I didn't say easy. I said easier. And like, my assumption is if you're being paid $10 million a year that you're putting in the work. Like, if you're not putting in the work, then what are we doing? Right? Like, if you're getting paid $10 an hour or $10 million a year, you should be putting in the work.
That's my question. Because like the thing, what when we sat there in Las Vegas at the Pac-12 championship game that they lost to Utah after the game, and I'm writing my column. What did I say? Like, I've said this over and over again because it drives me insane. Why don't you just call someone who worked for Kirby Smart or Nick Saban, ask them how they practice defense, and just do that?
God, we were in Vegas and I was a half away. Could you imagine the meal we could have had there? It wouldn't have gone as far.
No, it wouldn't. I don't know.
1,000 wouldn't have gone as far.
Nashville's come up in price. It's about like Vegas now. So
I don't know. The Vegas steakhouses are. I went on a date with Britt to the steakhouse in the Wynn. I can't remember what the place is called. It's the one down by the waterfall. And we just both got. I got a drink and she got a drink and steak and her fish or whatever, and it was like $450 just for two people. So like, really good steak.
I'm a way more expensive date than Britt, as we learned from our.
Well, I mean, for two people, and we just got a few meals and a few sides and 2 drinks. Like, it shouldn't have been $500.
That's true. Your problem with mine is I was deliberately trying to run it up, and
yeah,
the whiskey was really good.
It's called the SW Steakhouse. If you've been there, it's really good.
Oh, that's the one at the Wynn.
It's a very sexy
Bourbon
steakhouse.
Steak was the place we paid off the USC.
Yeah.
But Ari, to put a bow on this conversation, because I think the people might be tired of hearing me say this over and over again. And I think that's probably what's so frustrating to me, because I like Lincoln Riley. I met him when he was the OC at East Carolina. I remember going to Greenville, North Carolina to talk to him for the first time, thinking, this guy, he's got it. He's got the world on a string. He's got it figured out. And I just don't understand. Like, the path is there for you. You just have to decide to take it. And it feels like that quote I read to you feels like denial, like deliberate denial. Like, I'm going to pretend we're as good as Oregon, but I'm a football coach and I can watch film and I can look at our rosters and I know we're not.
Yeah. And now what about their roster? Because everything's always about next year, right? Now what?
Right.
They lost every identifiable player that was a difference maker for them. Who am I forgetting?
Right. And they have Hassan Longstreet coming in at QB, and you know, you talk to the folks who cover recruiting, and Hassan Longstreet is supposed to be an excellent quarterback. And this is a Southern California kid. So hopefully that works out for them, because I don't want USC to fail. Like, the Pete Carroll years were so much fun. Though they were an absolute, like, they killed everybody, but they were a blast to watch.
I was going to ask you, what do you think? Because, like, listen, programs have downturns, right? Programs have periods of time where, like, Florida's going through one now. Notre Dame's been through one. Alabama was one before Saban. Everybody's got their moments. What do you think that Pete Carroll did? Or what do you think his magic was? Like, we know what Nick Saban's superpower was, right? Mm-hmm. Evolution and being able to keep up with the times and just being a master motivator. What did Pete Carroll unlock there that nobody's been able to because everybody's tried to follow that plan. What did he do?
He recruited the best. It wasn't just him recruiting the best of Southern California. Everybody says, oh, Pete Carroll just owns Southern California. No. Like, he went all over the place. Mike Williams was from Tampa. Like,
yeah.
Nickel Roby's from Frostproof, Florida. They went everywhere to get good players. Joe McKnight was from Louisiana. Like, so they took the best players, accumulated. Okay, so you got an ex-NFL coach who's a good evaluator. So he does these great evals. He finds these great players. He stacks them up and pits them against one another every single freaking day. He created such a high level for competition for starting spots, and the competition was open every single day, that their edge was just unbelievable. And that's exactly what Kirby Smart does, exactly what Nick Saban did. Like, it's no different. Pete Carroll dressed it up in a different vibe. Like, Will Ferrell would come out and do practical jokes and stuff like that. Pete Carroll also made it cool to play at USC.
I thought that Lincoln Riley was going to be able to make it cool, Andy.
Pete Carroll's a little more of a showman than Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley
shuts practice down. Lincoln Riley shuts practice down, and then Pete Carroll's the one who has like, hey, we have practice today. Anybody can come.
But I think with Pete Carroll, you look at the early years of the Seahawks, Pete Carroll, where they were really, really good. Their culture was good too. Like, they just, that Legion of Boom culture was very similar to what he had at USC. Now, it's different in the NFL because obviously you are playing for your job every single day. But they also, one thing that you noticed when he got to Seattle, they didn't have any sacred cows. Like, remember, they signed Matt Flynn and drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. And even though they'd spent significant money on Matt Flynn, they're like, well, Russell Wilson better. Let's start him. Richard Sherman was a 6th round draft pick. Didn't matter. Like, he was better.
Well, here's a question then. Does USC need a showman? Do they need to match the Hollywood vibe?
I don't think it matters.
In the chat, like Pete Carroll had Snoop Dogg running routes at practice. Like, do we need to have somebody in that position that has, Patrick Swayze?
Kirby Smart would win there, and he's not a showman.
Yeah.
I think you lean into what you're good at, and that was something Pete Carroll was good at. He had kind of a mischievous, whimsical streak. But you don't have to have that. You just have to make people want to kick ass for you.
Yeah.
Dan Lanning makes people want to kick ass for him. I don't care if Oregon has a money cannon. Texas has money. Ohio State has money. Michigan has money.
Yeah. But now USC doesn't have players and a quarterback yet. A proven one anyway. So and it's like that's the
Jay
one
Miles
place
coming back, I guess. We think.
Is that the starter?
So, I don't know. And I worry this
is the one thing that he was supposed to be consistently good at.
Yeah. I worry this gets worse before it gets better too. Because again, he's got the God contract.
What is it? 2 more years before the God contract becomes buyouty?
Ari, in 2 years is still expensive. Like, Jen Cohen's the AD there. She came from Washington. She didn't hire Lincoln Riley. She actually hired Kalen DeBoer at Washington. So she kind of knows what she wants, what she's looking for. It's a tough situation. And I wrote this in the column. I think they're just praying Kevin Warren, former Big Ten commissioner, now the president of the Chicago Bears, goes, I think Caleb Williams needs to see a familiar face every day.
Can Chicago offer him a compensation package and a deal that would make him want to leave? Like,
I think if the pay was anywhere close, he'd take the NFL head coaching job just to escape this and start.
Head
start
coaching
over.
job. Sorry, I thought you meant OC.
Yeah, you're thinking OC. No. And that's the thing. Like,
yeah,
if I were Lincoln Riley, I don't care how bad I wanted to get out of somewhere, I wouldn't take an NFL OC job because that's like a 90% pay cut.
I mean, he's not qualified to be an NFL head coach right now, so that's not going to happen. Yeah,
they're not going to hire him.
The only time you can hire a college coach to be an NFL head coach is if they're coming off of awesomeness, because it's already a leap to do it to begin with. But like you saw, like when Urban Meyer got hired by Jacksonville, like there was some mixed emotion about that, right? And maybe he wasn't on a high either.
The people who were mixed about it were right. So,
but who was?
I was wrong about that. I thought he'd be able to adjust better than he did, and he didn't. So,
yeah, he made it 4 months.
Speaking of those guys, let's shift gears a little bit. We got to tell everybody about Panini though, and I'm looking at my good as gold Justin Herbert autograph here, and I'm thinking about Jim Harbaugh, who You talk about coming off of awesomeness. He was awesome, winning the national title at Michigan. Now he's with the Chargers. He's got Justin Herbert. I've got this beautiful autograph. But with Panini America, you can also get cards of some of your favorite college players because the Luminance series features NIL autograph cards. Some of the names are just awesome. Arch Manning, Jalen Milroe, DJ Lagway. I've got an Aronde Gadsden, the second one that I pulled from a pack of Luminance cards, and I love that he signed it OG2. Also was a Dolphins fan growing up, so Dad, I remember very well. Ari, you just went and got a bunch of cards. What you got?
So I have collected cards of players I covered and players that like I've interviewed like during the recruiting process and like got to know pretty well. And I've got two nukes here. One's a collegiate card that I got back from BGS today. This one's Justin Fields, and this is a patch autograph from National Treasures. Now, Panini sent us this year's version. This is from 2021, and it has a piece of the national title game patch on the card with his auto. That's the 5. And if you like a college player or team, you could do that. And then this one's one of my biggest cards I have. This is a 101 Garrett Wilson with a with an NFL swatch there. That's the chest plate NFL badge. And that one
from the jersey. That's cool.
Yeah, that one it's one of one. So this one's a nuke, as they like to say in the hobby. And then here's some from Immaculate. Here's Zay Flowers rookie autograph patch that I just got back.
Very nice.
Open for a better grade. And then Sam Laporta first off the line patch autograph. That's 1 to 18. These are numbered to 18. So
I love Sam Laporta at Iowa. And I love him even more on the Lions because it's so much fun watching him get to play with other people who can also catch the ball and run
One
with
last nuke here, Andy. Jordan Love rookie auto, and I love his autograph.
Look at that. That's beautiful. So visit PaniniAmerica.net to collect your favorite college and NFL stars. Start your collection today. Visit PaniniAmerica.net. Now, Ari, it is a Wendy's Saucy Take Wednesday, but before we do that, because we've got to talk about something that you and I and producer River were texting about yesterday, because there's a really interesting little moment on the Pat McAfee show where Dan Orlovsky from ESPN was joining them, and the name Mike Vrabel came up, and Orlovsky said, "I think Vrabel knows where he's going."
Oh boy! After
this season, and McAfee kept saying pro or college, pro, and Orlovsky wouldn't answer, and we got all excited because like, oh, does this mean? Does this mean Ohio State? Ari, I don't want to burst everybody's bubble, but our friend General Bobby Carpenter, former Ohio State linebacker, who is a friend of Mike Vrabel, tweeted this morning that Orlovsky's silence was not because he was going to Ohio State. It was because he's probably going to an NFL team that has not fired its coach yet, and he did not want to step in it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the thing about the Ohio State stuff is their season's not over. So, like, if Ryan Day wins the national title,
right,
they're not going to fire him.
So, no decisions have been made, and I don't. Yeah. I still firmly believe, even if they lose on Saturday, he's not getting fired. Like, I'm sorry, and maybe I'm wrong, but that. I think Ross Bjork, the AD there, now he's new, but he's got that chip in his head that like, I can't fire somebody with this record. I can't. I just can't do it. So,
well, here's the thing. I've got a lot of opinions on this. Okay. One, Ohio State might not be very good next year. Like when we might do a way too early bracket projection. And when I say not very good, I mean by their standard. Like they might not. I don't mean like 6 and 6. But like but they're looking right down the barrel at 9-3, in my opinion. If you go, they're playing Texas early in the season.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule.
Like they've got a tough schedule next year, and they're going on the road to Michigan, who presumably is going to be better. Penn State is bringing back Drew Aller, and they're working it in the portal right now. Like they don't like in terms of like last year when Ohio State lost to Michigan a year ago, they lost to the eventual national champions. And it was a tough loss, and certainly I think one of the biggest additions of the rivalry in history because of like the Connor Stallion stuff and all that stuff. But the thing that I don't know about with this is if you don't want to or can't fire him now, then you are bringing him back into a season that's going to be a transition season anyway, because next year they're losing half of their roster, and I don't know what they're going to do in the portal to fix it. They're losing a lot of guys.
I think they're going to probably be pretty aggressive in the portal.
And they're going to have to be, but they haven't been so far. So the
Quentin Joyner, one of the USC players who's leaving, who averaged 7.6 yards a carry, he's already visited there. Now, he's also visiting Texas Tech, which we're going to have a chat next week about the Red Raiders in the portal, because they are basically getting visits from everybody big. So,
but like the thing too, it's just like, okay, so they're going to go get a running back. Okay, well, good. I mean, I don't know. They're losing their entire defensive line. They'll have Julian Sand, and a lot's going to fall on his shoulders because he's presumably going to start next year. But then they're going to have Caleb Downs, and they're going to have Jeremiah Smith. So if you have a good quarterback and the best receiver and the best safety in the country, you have a good starting spot. But what I'm saying is that, like, if you are reserving your judgment for Ryan Day based on what they do next year, like the outlook for like, how is it going to be better than what they had this year is like a grim outlook at the moment. So like, if Mike Vrabel were to be around, I could totally understand the rationalization of you go get your guy now if he's willing to do it. But again, I'm not saying that's what Orlovsky was saying.
I just don't think he's willing to do it. I think he wants to be an NFL coach. He's the top of the list for anybody who is an NFL owner with an opening.
But like next year when we go into Ohio State season, let's just say Ohio State loses to Tennessee on Saturday or loses to Oregon in the second round, an early exit from the tournament. Does he come into next year on the hot seat? Like, is that what we're thinking?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay,
maybe.
so if he goes into, so then what would he have to do if it was national championship or bust with a $20 million roster this year to save his job next year when they're going to be unquestionably worse from a talent perspective?
Win the Big Ten, be in the national championship mix, like that's it. Like the same thing you have to do every year at Ohio State. Beat Michigan.
And then on top of that too, go beat Michigan on the road. Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. Frankie has a question that will lead us into our saucy takes. Who's going to coach Wake Forest? Well, it's going to be Jake Dickert. Former Washington State coach Jake Dickert. Our Pete Nakos reporting that. The Athletic reported it. Matt Zenitz from 24/7. This is one we mentioned yesterday as a possibility. Jake Dickert has done a fabulous job at Washington State. Not his fault that conference realignment happened around him. And unfortunately for Washington State, that's what's going to happen is you lose people. And so Jake Dickert headed east to take over at Wake Forest for Dave Clawson. And that brings me to my saucy take, and it relates to Washington State and people leaving Washington State. The most impactful transfer of the 2025 offseason is in the portal now. It is John Mateer, the quarterback from Washington State. This guy is awesome. If you did not watch any Washington State games this year, I want you to go to YouTube. You're watching on YouTube now, or if you're listening in podcast form, click on YouTube when we're done with the show. Just watch some highlights of this dude. He is spectacular. Imagine Cam Ward, who came from Washington State to Miami. Imagine Cam Ward, but devastating on design quarterback runs. Because Cam Ward's a good scrambler, but you're not necessarily running a lot of QB power with Cam Ward. You're kind of, snapping it to him and just letting him cook. You can snap it to Mateer and let him cook, but you can also just say, you know what? We're going to pull these guys. You run behind him, and he does some incredible things. This guy is going to make whatever program he goes to better immediately. Now, the assumption is that program that he's going to is Oklahoma, because Ben Arbuckle was the OC at Washington State. He's now the OC at Oklahoma, 29 years old, wonderkind. We think that's where John Mateer ends up, but a new suitor has joined the fray, and it's a familiar move. Miami, the place where Cam Ward went after he left Washington State and then became a Heisman Trophy finalist. Also making a play for John Mateer.
Could you make the case that Miami would be a more desirable landing spot for Mateer at this point?
No, because his OC's at Oklahoma.
I know. It's like, but like if you took the coaching connection out of it, where would you rather play? Like what players would you rather play?
Well, the thing with Oklahoma is you actually, if you're John Mateer, you probably got to help them get your playmakers. Like you're probably going to have to help recruit your playmakers there, which I think is perfectly fine. Miami, they're going to have a better more. Line. Miami has a better offensive line. We know that. And Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator at Miami, is an air raid guy, like speaks the same language as you. So it would be a fairly seamless transition there too.
You know who's at Miami today?
Who's at Miami today?
AC Concepcion.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
I'm just saying, like, from a playing standpoint, you could make a case that Miami is a more desirable place to land for him outside of who he knows on the coaching staff. Yeah.
John in the chat much earlier asked a really fun question, and it tells me that John's definitely been reading up on things. Said, which Jordan Brand school is Zachariah Branch going to? I will point out that Oklahoma is a Jordan Brand school. So just that is the rumor that he lands at a Jordan Brand school. So for those who don't know what the Jordan Brand schools are, it is Oklahoma, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida. Am I missing one? I think UCLA is Jordan Brand now too.
Yeah, but Mateer is going to go to Oklahoma, I think, right? Like that's.
I think so too.
Like
this feels like,
and it could be the first step too for like Oklahoma because he's awesome. Oklahoma has every single thing a program could ever need to be great. And they've been consistently great. Hey, they made Lincoln Riley look good because they're so great. Like to wrap it back around the beginning. But Oklahoma to me has untapped potential, and I actually love Brent Venables as a human. Like I think that like they can do it.
And they're gonna have, as Sean points out in the chat. Now, I realize they're losing some people, like Danny Stutzman's going to the NFL, but they're going to have a good defense. Like, Brent Venables is going to field a good defense.
Yeah, there's no question. That's like a guarantee, right? Because he's a defensive mastermind. And, like, also, too, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if there's a way to look it up, but it's just my perception that fixing a bad defense is so much harder than fixing a bad offense. Like, I feel like...
Because a bad offense is fixed by bringing in the right QB, and a bad defense... There's a lot more moving parts you have to deal with.
So, like, if you've noticed, the like teams like, and this was a struggle with maybe this is just a Lincoln Riley thing, but like teams that have had bad defenses for years, right? Like it's like, oh, they brought in a new OC or DC.
Matt Brown, like, version 2.0 at North Carolina. Like it didn't matter who they brought in, the defense couldn't play. Yeah,
all these teams that have traditionally had bad defenses continually have bad defenses. So, like. From that aspect of it too, like from a playmaking standpoint, I understand why Mateer might like to play at Miami, but from a program, like the thing that's interesting is like if you had to buy stock in which program will break through first, Oklahoma or Miami, who are you buying that in right now?
Oklahoma is the blue chippiest of blue chip stocks. The only more blue chip stock than Oklahoma is Ohio State. I've said this a million times. Ohio State's never had a downturn in its entire football history. Oklahoma has had one in the mid to late 90s before Bob Stoops got hired. That's it. One. They're always good.
How long does a downturn have to be for it to be a
couple
downturn?
Years. Couple years.
Are they having one now?
They still had a 10-win season in between the 2 years they consider to be mediocre.
True.
That's the problem. Like Oklahoma's good always.
Yeah, they are. The kid's electric, though. It'll be exciting to see where he goes. Is he's the most impactful? That was your take?
Oh yeah. He's gonna be the one that makes the biggest impact. And
what's that like? Naked?
What? You don't think that's saucy? Out of all the players transferring,
the number one quarterback on the board is the most impactful transfer? Is hot to you?
Okay, we know he's the number one quarterback on the board. I'm not sure the casual fan knows, like, were they watching the CW to see John Mateer?
Well, I know, but I think that it's just become accepted by people that he's number one, right?
Anybody who's watched him knows he's number one, but I just don't think that many people have watched him yet.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to come in, and the fans who, not the people who are with our show every day, but the ones who flip it on when the games start are going to be like, holy crap, who is this?
Yeah, no, he's awesome. I think to
Yeah.
the casual fan that might be Saucy, but I think if you like whittle it down to the basics of what it is,
so what you're saying
will be impactful.
I see where you're going with this. This is an Andy doesn't know his audience situation.
No,
I get
your audience, but you also know that your audience is really smart, which means that your take is not hot, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. All right. Your saucy take, Ari.
I don't know if this is saucy either. I don't know if we brought the
I think it is, because I before you say it, I'm just going to imagine our friend Ralph Russo from The Athletic, formerly the Associated Press, steam coming out of his ears when he hears you say this.
Me and Ralph Russo had like a really, really, really long and ongoing debate about how often a human being that's rational should check the weather app on their phone. And he said he should do it every day when you wake up. And I'm like, I literally never look at it ever. I just like look out the window and get an idea. Hey, it's, you know what the day is going to be.
I was on the group text, Ari.
Yeah.
Folks, this group text started like on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. and was still raging like Friday at 5 p.m. And I never chimed in, maybe once. It's just Ralph and Ari going back and forth about the freaking weather.
Because you live in a place where there's actual weather emergencies. And like, I think it's also where I grew up. It's like, I grew up in Phoenix. Like,
yeah, the
weather is very consistent there. Yeah, like you don't have to like look every day. So maybe it's where I grew up. I think if you compulsively check the weather app on your phone every day or like are consumed by it, there's something like off there. Like, I don't understand.
Are you saying Nick Saban is off?
Yeah.
Because he compulsively checked the weather.
Yeah. And like there are times, where like the weather's nice in the morning and then there's storm comes, but it's like, what if a storm comes, then what? This is
purely upbringing for you. You lived in a place where the weather never changed.
But the only time that the weather impacts what you're doing is if you're doing something outside. And in those instances, you check the weather. But if you're in the mall or at your house or going to work, like what you're going to work either way. Like what is it, whether to bring an umbrella? Like I have no idea like what people are looking for. Like last night, there was a bad thunderstorm in Dallas. I didn't know it until I got an alert on my phone on the way to pick up my daughter from school. And then it hit on my way to go pick up my daughter from school. But like
3 alerts on your phone, you wouldn't have known about it unless you checked the weather.
But nothing changed. I drove nothing changed about my day because of it. I had to go pick up my daughter either way.
All right, let's turn this to football because there is a football related reason for you being, and I actually agree with you on this one.
I'm really, really tired of this cold weather bullshit, Andy. Like, it's like, okay, it's cold. They got to go play in Ohio Stadium and SMU's got to go to State College and it's going to be freezing. And it's like, yeah. It's not like every single newspaper writer who still approaches the job like it's 2003, like is like eating this alive right now. And it's like everyone's being asked, Nico, have you ever played in cold weather before? It's like, yeah, probably when he practiced yesterday. It's cold.
It did snow in Knoxville last week. I thought it was funny because Nico mentioned like a 7-on-7 tournament in Michigan. I actually covered a 7-on-7 tournament in Knoxville that Nico played in April of 2022 where it snowed. Like me and Austin Price were out there just freezing our butts off.
And like everybody's cold. And I know that everybody goes to like, oh, Tennessee played at Georgia and it was 55 and the heater was broken and everyone like, okay, all right. You don't think Ohio State's going to be cold? It's 20 degrees outside. I'm going to be cold. You're going to be cold. It's going to be a cold night.
Well,
but
and
the funniest thing to me is that Ohio State.
Let's talk playoff history. So playoff history, like, because we don't have any college football history to go on here. But in the NFL, where's the place everybody says, oh, you don't want to play there in the winter, in the playoffs, because it's just
this is what people say. It's nonsense.
Lambeau Field. Who has won the last 2 playoff games in the winter at Lambeau Field?
I don't even know. I don't remember. Who was that? I have no memory.
The visiting team. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the San Francisco 49ers. Teams that don't live in cold weather, never play in cold weather.
On the road in cold weather, like the Dolphins aren't good. It's like, I get it. Like if you are Miami and you've got to go to State College, it's a shock to the system. But I got news for you. Nobody likes playing in the cold, okay? And also, if you know anything about Ohio State, they're the team that's probably going to be more worse off for it.
We've had this discussion, like they're built for a dome. Like we had the joke conversation, and maybe they just put a dome on the horseshoe.
Michigan 2 years ago in Ann Arbor or whatever it was. The weather was the number one excuse.
Yeah,
and you had their athletic director Gene Smith saying they're going to play their game in a dome because of weather in Indianapolis.
John said you don't want to play in Buffalo in the playoffs. Didn't bother Joe Burrow a couple years ago.
But also too, that's playing in a blizzard and playing in cold is different. But playing in a blizzard, don't you think Tennessee would prefer to play in a blizzard?
Ari, Nick in the chat says, and great pull on knowing the SID at Ohio State. Yeah. Jerry Emig needs to issue both sideline passes and no press box, and maybe he'll change your mind. Listen, I would love to be on the sideline on Saturday.
Cold, but I'm not saying it isn't cold. I'm saying I'm tired of it being the number one narrative of the entire weekend.
We got to talk about something.
Okay, that's it. We moved on. That's it. It's going to be cold for both teams. Like, I'm tired of it. And also, too, like, it was unseasonably warm in Dallas yesterday, probably because of the thunderstorm. I put those two things together without looking at the app. Can you believe it? And
he's not a meteorologist, folks.
So, but like Dallas, okay, like, so Dallas gets cold, right? I'm wearing a hoodie right now. It was freezing when I dropped my daughter off this morning. Playing in Pennsylvania in State College in 19-degree weather for SMU is going to be a different environment than they're used to being in, right? I get it. But do you think that, like, Penn State wants to play in that shit? Like, I know nobody wants to play in that.
Though I will listen. Dylan Sampson and Tyler Warren, I think, are the two people.
They'll be fine.
I don't want to tackle in this weather. Like Dylan Sampson in the Tennessee Ohio State game, Tyler Warren in the Penn State SMU game. Those are the people I don't want to have to tackle in this weather.
But if you gave like Josh Heupel the truth serum in the neck and he had to tell the truth, don't you think he would prefer to play in a blizzard?
Homie's from North Dakota, of course he would.
I mean, but think about the way Ohio State is
South
built.
Dakota. Wrong Dakota.
If Ohio State has to run the ball and can't throw it to Jeremiah Smith, which, funny enough, they didn't do in the Michigan game either when it was beautiful outside. And then they have to go up against that defensive line in the freezing cold. And they have Dylan Sampson, who's favored in this matchup now. Everyone's talking about the cold and how it's going to favor Ohio. Ohio State wants it to be 74 degrees and sunny out. That's how they play. They're going to be worse off for it.
All I know is I'm packing essentially like I'm packing for a ski trip for this trip.
Let me ask you this. And maybe it's nothing. Okay, maybe there's no change, but I have thought about this. If Ohio State played Michigan in a dome the last 4 years, do you think they would still be 0-4? Or, like, is there even a thought to it?
Good question. It's a good question.
Like with the faster track and the no weather elements, and it just played inside in the Cotton Bowl.
It's a legitimate question, and that's the scary part. And I think that it's a legitimate question that probably makes Ohio State fans want to put their head through a wall.
They probably would have lost. They probably would have lost all of them, right? Because like they have some deep issues that have got to be figured out. But
I think a dominant run game, which is what Michigan used at least 3 of those years to beat Ohio State, doesn't really matter what. I mean,
yeah, but if you also it
is exacerbated by the cold, but it still works in the warm.
For sure. That travels. You know, I'm not saying it's not an excuse. I don't have an excuse. They lost. I don't care. But Ohio State is built to play in a dome.
Ari, we love you. You're the type of guy to question everything. I bet you're a conspiracy theorist.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think that it's funny when everybody dismisses all of them.
You're very intellectually curious, and I love that about you.
But like most of the stuff is stupid, right? Like, oh, the COVID vaccine's got a microchip and all. I'm not going down that road. But one of them has to be true, right? Like some
it's the one that keeps everybody coming back.
Which one's true? Like the JFK one's definitely true, right? Like JFK wasn't just killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. Like I live in Dallas. I've been to the place. My dad's obsessed with it. Like there's a lot happening there.
The truth predicted you were going to going to JFK next.
I don't know. Like Bush did 9/11. Like there's all these different. Like which one's true? Dude, I saw the thing. I'm not doing a very good job of like pretending like I'm not a conspiracy theorist because like I really am not.
Kind of.
But somebody asked me if there are aliens. And one time I watched this video on YouTube, Andy, and the video shows or tried to explain how big the galaxy is or the universe.
Yes.
And I guess we know
which is why I believe there are aliens, because there's just too much stuff out there.
So from the known of the edge of the universe, I guess takes hundreds of millions of light years away. That's how far it is. That is a distance that I can't even comprehend. Think about the speed of light traveling for 100 million years is infinite. It's infinity. There's no way. So we're the only ones in this speck of sand on a speck of sand in the entire universe. Like, you know, how arrogant you'd have to be to believe that.
And that is your existential moment with Ari. But no, I agree. I agree with you completely on that. And I am not a conspiracy theorist.
Haven't they already found I
just believe in math.
When I went to Arizona, like they had a huge Mars department, and I took an astronomy class when I was in college. Haven't they already found like proof of water and fossils, like microscopic fossils?
Water.
No, there's like microscopic fossils of like small organisms that existed on Mars at one point. I think they've already shown that. Flat Earth is. If you think it's a flat Earth, then I think you're nuts because there's actual pictures of the world. Like we have literal pictures of it. I'll do the universe.
All right. First, we got to talk about
who's the Zodiac killer. Okay, go.
Stop. Okay. We're going to talk about what's going on in Columbus this weekend because producer Rivers' saucy take involves what's going on in Columbus this weekend. Let's take a look at that through the lens of PrizePicks first. Our friends at PrizePicks, the best daily fantasy game in America. Download the app, use the code Staples, play $5, get $50 instantly. What does PrizePicks think Nico's going to do? 188.5 passing yards. What about Will Howard? 235.5 passing yards. 188.5 passing yards for Nico. Is that enough? Can Tennessee win if that's all?
Yes.
If Nico throws for 189 yards?
Yes.
Because Dylan Sampson goes more than 93 and a half yards?
Football in Ohio State can't stop the run when it matters. Ohio State was supposed to have the best defense in college football this year, and they shut down Michigan for 3 quarters, then gave up more yards in the 4th quarter than they had in the entire game on the ground.
Yeah. And that's the issue because, and it's funny because this also ties into the Indiana Notre Dame game. Ohio State and Indiana's defenses statistically are what you're saying Ohio State is. Like, Ohio State's defense statistically is awesome. But against Oregon, against Michigan when it mattered, it didn't show up. Indiana.
The only time in the last 3 years Ohio State has gotten a stop that it's absolutely needed in a game they could lose. I guess 2 this year, right? Nebraska and Penn State, but they failed to get a stop against Georgia in the playoff. They have not stopped Michigan in the 4th quarter once at any. They haven't punted in the 4th quarter the last 4 years. That's the stat for you. That's crazy, right? Yeah, Michigan has not punted in the 4th quarter against Ohio State in 4 years. They didn't get a stop against Oregon, and they did not get a stop against Michigan on either. So
you're saying Tennessee just wears him down, and Dylan Sampson has a crazy 4th quarter.
I'm questioning Ohio State's clutch factor with its defense because when you get in the playoff, you need to get stops in the 4th quarter, and they get stops throughout the game, and they're really good. They have come up short getting stops in big moments against teams that they shouldn't lose to.
So that check if Dylan Sampson square is what Ari's saying. Play $5, get $50 instantly when you use the code Staples.
Is up 4 and they've got the ball, like I would not feel confident that Ohio State gets the stop they need. Like they get a ton of stops, they rarely get the stops they need. I've noticed. All right.
Well, that Dylan Sampson square on PrizePicks is one you may want to check out. All right, producer River, time for your saucy take. Now, disclaimer: Rivers of all for life.
I am.
Grew up a Tennessee fan. Attended Tennessee. Worked in the video department at Tennessee. Yep. So he's trained by the balls.
Yes, I am one of us.
You are ball Twitter. That's what you are.
I am Vol Twitter.
This is the personification.
The
of
least
Vol.
toxic version of Vol Twitter.
When you see Vol Twitter people yelling at you and creating graphics, this is the guy right here. That's what it looks like behind the screen.
I'm the culprit. I'm buying into it. Tennessee fans are actually going to take over the shoe this weekend. I think
These are your people, River. How much of this is so? For those who don't know, there's been an undercurrent of Vol Twitter this week saying, okay, here's how you get tickets to this game. Here's how you buy them through Ohio State. And then once all that was done, like people were making AI images of themselves in Ohio State gear to try to trick the Ohio State system into allowing them to buy tickets.
Can you explain to me why that's necessary?
I think I don't know.
When have they ever seen a picture of me purchasing a ticket of anything?
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't want the opposing team to take over. Ross Bjork, the AD, has said, don't let this happen. Don't sell your tickets cheap. The problem is, and I think with all the 100,000 plus seat stadiums, there's a lot of seats, and not everybody can go. And Tennessee fans are highly motivated. I said this earlier this week, River. I don't think Ohio State fans are going to let it happen where it's like a third Tennessee fans. But you think it's going to be a pretty big number?
Yeah, I think that this fan base is just crazy enough to do it. And we saw a tweet from VolQuest last night that said on another site, 42% of the Tennessee Ohio State tickets sold on SeatGeek have gone to Tennessee residents. And I've had a lot of people I've been on the phone with. Are you going? Are you going? I'm not. I'm staying home base to produce and all that good stuff. But there's a lot of people just coming out of the woodworks. And if you know anything about this fan base, they're knucking fuds. They're crazy. And
we know.
Yeah.
We've been on the business end of all Twitter before.
Here's the thing. Ohio State fans are freaking crazy too. Okay,
exactly.
Like I know that they act like
Vol Twitter doesn't
the only one that's unhinged. The thing that I don't know, because listen, I went to every Ohio State game for 10 years, and the only thing I ever saw in 10 years, I saw some high points, I saw some low points, was Ohio State taking over other team stadiums. But that usually only happens or used to Indiana, or the worst one was when they played at Cal, in 2014. Or 15 or 16, whatever year that was. There is an opportunity here, maybe, because Ohio State fans are apathetic at the moment, I think, even though, and they've been playing in these games regularly for the last 10 years. And Tennessee has been starving for a game like this, and Ohio State fans are angry. So I don't know if that is going to be the case. But when you say take over the shoe, what does that look like to you? Because I'm very interested to see what that actually looks like.
To me, I said a third of the stadium, which was about 35,000 Tennessee fans. And I was basing it off of, I traveled with the team in 2022.
I just can't imagine that.
I can't imagine.
If it is, it's going to be crazy.
This was in Baton Rouge 2 years ago. So just a big look at. Now, I know it's warm and sunny, and it was in the middle of October, but that's in Baton Rouge. And Columbus is a shorter drive than Baton Rouge for the fans. And
what quarter was that? Oh, that's pretty crazy. But what quarter was that taken?
That was the fourth quarter. That was the end of the game.
Okay, so all the LSU fans had left at that point?
Yes.
So, and that always looks more drastic that way. I don't know. But the tickets, you can go on to Game Time right now and get tickets for $100, right?
And
I think for that game. They're more expensive for that game. $100 for the Penn State game, which one of the people in the chat just pointed out. It's a noon game, and it's very difficult to drive to a noon. Let's say you live in Philly or Pittsburgh, you say, it's a 3-hour drive. Just get up. If you've ever tried to get to Beaver Stadium from the interstate, that part of it takes an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So. That I understand why those tickets are a little bit lower. But let's see what on Game Time right now. A little bonus Game Time ad. Use code Staples for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Right now, Tennessee, Ohio State. Okay, ticket prices are dropping still. Have been dropping all week. Right now, the top 1% value, which is 15A row 25. This is actually a pretty good seat. Yeah. You're basically kind of on the 5-yard line. Got a little nice 3/4 view of the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
$194 a seat.
It's not bad.
You can get in the nosebleeds for $111. Yeah, the ticket prices come way down.
Yeah.
The thing that's what I don't understand. Like the AI, anybody can buy a ticket to any game.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, we're nearing below face value. Like that's.
I've had friends trying to sell tickets. They bought them early for $250 a piece, and now like the market's way below that. But Heupel, he did comment on it.
Josh, I know you're focused on things on the field, but Tennessee fans have been really enthusiastic to find tickets and to buy tickets to get to this game. Any part of that surprise you that they've managed to find their way into that stadium?
Not with this fan base. It's a nice short drive up there, and Christmas is right around the corner. It's a great Christmas present. So,
Knoxville to Memphis is a longer drive than Knoxville to Columbus.
The thing
We
that
made
is
the Columbus
interesting
to
to
Knoxville
me,
drive earlier this year.
Mhm.
We did.
and
it.
I want us all to just envision this though, because people have like lost their minds with some of my takes about the rivalry and how important it is. But Ohio State is a top 7 seed in the playoff and hosting a playoff game, and people are upset right now.
Yeah.
Like that, like think about how important that game is to them. You know, like they still like Tennessee is fired up to be playing in this game and they
They're
want to
happy
go
to
buy
be
all these
there.
tickets. Ohio State fans are just like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you talk about apathy, maybe part of the reason why Ohio State hasn't had prolonged down periods is because the fan base has no appetite for losing at all. And like there's no temp, like even though they lost a game that outside of bragging rights and rivalry is inconsequential to their goal of winning a national title, they're devastated right now.
Yeah.
So how do you respond to devastation? Do you respond by staying at home and saying, I'm not going to go to another game until Ryan Day's not the coach, or do you go support your team no matter what? Like that to me is kind of an interesting psychological thought there. And like,
and I'm seeing it in the chat. I don't think people understand because somebody in the chat says, "Oh, Ohio State has a bunch of casual fans. No match for an SEC fan base." No, Ohio State would fit right into the SEC.
Yeah.
Their fans are just as psychotic as Alabama fans or Tennessee fans or Auburn fans. Like there is no difference, and which is why I have such a hard time believing that this is going to be as orange as River thinks it is.
but I actually think too that like there are Ohio State fans out there, and I don't know what the percentage would be. They are hoping or will be okay with Ohio State losing to Tennessee because they want their coach to be different.
Why?
They would rather rip the Band-Aid off
and-
now, and it's a lost season. They lost him. Like here's the thing too, and we haven't had to talk about this, and this could be a whole other episode.
Probably going to have to.
But like, if you win the national title as an Ohio State fan, but you lost to Michigan during that season, you love the national title because who doesn't love a natty? But like, it doesn't feel the same, right?
Well, they've never had a season where they won the national title and lost to Michigan, so
But
nobody
like, if
knows.
Ohio State wins the national title this year, they're not going to be renaming Lane Avenue Undisputed Drive like they did in 14. Like,
No, but
right?
I think they'll be effectively obnoxious.
Yeah, I mean,
I
they'll
mean, I would be.
celebrate, but like, it would suck that. What's the essence of being a fan? It's to talk shit and to go onto the internet, and you get to like Michigan fans can say we beat you
They
during your
can.
national title year. Like that takes away from it a little bit.
I love this.
Old Ari.
This is what I love. I love that we are in the place of can Ohio State win the national title, but it be completely unsatisfying? Like,
I mean, I don't know if unsatisfying is the word, but it would be like hitting a nice card out of Panini, but it coming out with a dent on the side.
Yeah.
It's like you have the card, but there's something wrong with it.
You got what you wanted, but there's a defect.
Because, like, listen, everyone's like, Ohio State's not winning the Natty. And it's like, I'm with you. I don't think they will, but they also have the third best odds to do it.
They
they're
can.
virtually the same as
Yeah.
Georgia right now. So,
Yeah.
like, they I don't know. Ohio State's offensive line issues, I think, are going to show up in a way that costs them a game eventually. And I don't know if it'll be on Saturday or later on in the tournament.
And that is
But-
the issue here.
Yeah.
You're talking about one of the deepest defensive lines they're going to face this weekend. If they get past Tennessee, Oregon's defensive line is very, very good. Like, the path for Ohio State is unfortunately beset on all sides by teams that can exploit their biggest weakness.
Is there a single team in the bracket that Ohio State cannot beat?
No.
That's the thing. So if they get hot, maybe they can get hot. I don't know. I doubt that they can get hot.
And honestly, if they go Tennessee, if they beat Tennessee and beat Oregon and then beat Texas, they have earned. That's to get to the national title game. That's not even to win it. That's to get there.
Yeah, Ohio State could, in theory, to win the national title, have to beat Tennessee, Oregon, and Georgia.
Or Notre Dame. Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah, like whatever the path is.
Or Penn State. Yeah, it's crazy. Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going to do it, but
it's all happening. The games are this week. The games, Friday night, we're going to be in South Bend. Saturday, we're going to be in Columbus. Tomorrow, though, we're going to be answering your questions. Dear Andy, dear Ari, you know how to do it. You know how to find us at Andy_Staples on social media, at Ari Wasserman on social media. If you have a particularly epic question that does not fit in 240 characters, AndyStaplesOn3 at gmail.com. Send us your questions. We will answer on tomorrow's show. It's so much fun. We are so close now. Third spot.